everyone. Welcome and good afternoon, or for those tuned in to California, happy rainy afternoon. Welcome to Meet to Motivate, which is our monthly forum presented by Building Women Empowered, where we address stigmas and issues affecting our community at large. We invite and encourage women of all walks of life from all parts of the world to join us and share their views on different topics. And our premiere show was on January 29th. And on that show, we talked about narcissism, and it was actually very well received. So we're here back with our second show. And today's topic is the challenges we face raising bicultural children. So what does this mean? Well, with so many immigrant families that have moved to the United States for a better life and a better opportunity for ourselves and, of course, for our kids and our families, one of the challenges that we do face here raising kids is the pressure to ensure that our children will understand, embrace, and respect their cultural heritage, right? And at the same time, we also want them to be well adjusted to the United States because we work so hard and we've sacrificed so much to come here. We leave our families, we leave our parents, and we come here wanting the best for our kids. And what happens is your kids get exposed to the American culture on a daily basis, and they're surrounded by people with, different views. So how do you balance that? How do you get your child to continue to understand what culture you have and what our ancestors have provided to us? And how do you also help them adjust to living in the United States? So today our panelists are going to discuss personal experiences and their observations raising children in two different cultures. So we're going to begin our show, and let's meet our panelists. So let's not waste any time here. Let's begin with my partner in crime, co-host and panelist, Ragini. Ragini is a co-founder of My Positivity Matters and is passionate about building a platform that makes personal transformation accessible. So welcome to the show, Ragini.
Thank you so much, Renu. Looking forward to this completely. I'm so excited because this is very close to my heart, this topic, because I have two small kids. And this is a time where I have to be very careful in terms of, how I should raise them. So I'm looking forward to hearing from each one of you, what are your tips and experiences that I can learn from. My, whatever little bit experience I have got so far, because my older one is 7, just turned 7. So a little bit experience that I saw like that recently, last month, he goes to Stratford, and it's amazing school and love it. But there was a month of different cultures like religion. So in the school, he learned about 3 topmost religions, and it was Christianity, it was Islam and Judaism. But my own culture and religion was totally missed. The whole month he was learning, and it was beautiful. I mean, I love that they're teaching these aspects because they need that, right? At the same time, I was a little bit sad that, okay, he's not learning something that I have learned throughout my schooling in India. And in India, you learn like sort of our culture on your own, right? Like you don't have to parents don't have to put extra effort because it's a part of the curriculum, it's a school and stuff. But here, that's what I figured. So I was like, okay, I have to put a little bit more extra effort in order to expose him to our traditions, our culture and festivals and, sort of things. So that's what alarm for me. So yeah, that's what my experience in short.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that. And so you got 2 kids?
Yes.
7 and
5. Just
7 and 5. Okay, so yeah. I'm so glad I'm past those ages, and I look after those kids, but I give them back to the parents every day with such relief. So, but thank you for sharing that. And our next panelist is Anjana. Anjana is a parent who's personally raised her children under these circumstances. She's a cybersecurity engineer, leader by profession, and a woman of varied interests, which I know very well, from fashion, modeling, dancing, and cooking. Her cooking is out of this world. She hosted a little private birthday party for me. It was a Moroccan theme. Of course, she stressed me out. I had to go find a Moroccan outfit. I don't think I found something, but the food was out of this world. I don't even know how many dishes she cooked. So multi-talented. Thank you for that. And so Anjana, tell us a little bit about your thoughts on this.
Absolutely. Thanks for the introduction, Renu. Yeah, I have 2 boys. One is 25 years old and the other one is 14. While all of this is over the hump or behind me right now, because I have done due diligence to what they need to know from both the cultures. So ours is not only a multicultural family, multi-religious family as well. So I think number one thing that I've tried to keep intact in the family is first of all, as adults, we have to have respect for all the cultures. If we don't have the respect for these cultures, we cannot imbibe any kind of, instill any confidence in the kids on these cultures themselves. And that's number one. And number two is talking in different languages. Different cultures talk in different languages. Putting them in an environment where there is more than one language. It's not just English, right? When you're in the US, there's Spanish, there is, different kinds of cultures in the mix. People are talking in their own native languages, so people get language confusion as well. So an example that I can give you in this raising bicultural is when the oldest one was about maybe, in daycare, like in the initial growing up years, because he moved to the US when he was 18 months old. His mom spoke in Tamil, his dad spoke in Telugu, and then in the school, they were speaking in English and Spanish. It was just a mess. So he had no idea what language to speak in, so he just zipped. So it was very hard for him to come out of that shell, and it took him about like 5 to 6 years. We decided to stick to him in one language, talk to him in one language. Once he started communicating better, then we would diversify him in additional languages. Now he's 25 years old and he can speak 6 languages. So that's one of the, and that's the best part of raising kids in this cultural heritage is you get exposure to so many different cultures, not just, bicultural as in Indian versus American, right? It's also, there are so many other countries coming in and you learn a lot of things from those countries as well. So
absolutely.
That's my
And it's funny you talk about how kids get confused with multiple languages. We see that a lot in preschool where kids are quiet and they're not speaking. And the first thing we'll ask the parents is, what languages are you speaking at home? And generally that you have mom speaking one language, dad the other, and then they have school in English. So we always tell them just focus on one right now so they can open up, because the child does get confused. But that's a great point. Thank you. Now we'll move over to Scotland. We'll meet Angina. Angina was born and raised in Scotland, and she's been in the US and actively working in healthcare management after completing her degree in podiatric medicine. She's also hosted and produced many TV shows. So welcome, Angina. What are your thoughts on this or your personal experience?
Thank you for having me, Renu, and thank you for the lovely introduction. I'm actually speaking from experience myself, since I was a bicultural child as well. So my parents are originally from Punjab and I was born and raised in Scotland. So I personally experienced that. And now I have a nearly 11-year-old daughter who I'm bringing up in, I guess, a triple culture, because we've got Indian, we've got Scottish, we've got American. So it's a complete mishmash, and I think it's a very important subject to discuss, and a very, I think, sentimental, and also a very, I guess, a very much needed one that we need to speak about, since we are having children that are very global nowadays. Everything is so small, the world is so small, and especially after COVID, it's definitely very small, being on Zoom and everything. So I'm really happy to be part of this and discussing this, and I can speak more of my experience as we go along. So thank you.
No, thank you so much. Thank you for your thoughts. We love your Scottish accent. You managed to keep that.
I did, and when I get angry, it gets stronger. So I try
well,
not to.
I used to speak just like the Brits when I got here. I kind of lost that, but so yes, I did. Yeah. So, and now we'll meet our reigning Miss NRI Global 2022. Another very talented young lady. She's a Wharton grad, business executive, and she's got a lot of empathy for different causes. And Gauri, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Renu, for that lovely introduction. I think it's very enriching to have the experience of experiencing 2 different cultures, but there are several challenges that come along with it. And what I've experienced was my niece, when she was going to school, I think especially if you're raising children in an area where there's not as many people from the culture of your home country. My sister is in Wisconsin, and my niece was going to the school where there was no Indian in the entire school. And I think for parents, you have to watch out if your child's behavior, if there's any changes in behavior after they start going to school, because my niece Ishani is a very talkative child, and she was slowly becoming very quiet. And then my sister saw and questioned the teacher, and she was told that yes, she started out being very talkative, but now she sits by herself and she sits alone for lunch. So I think those are certain things that parents have to watch out for, and those are challenges, because the kid is trying to figure out what their identity is, because at school they're exposed to a completely different identity and they're trying to fit in. And so I think it helps if there's some other people from the same culture, and if they understand, and also you can root cause if there's any bullying happening at school. So I think that's challenge one. And challenge two is I've seen some friends experience this who grew up in the US and had Indian parents, so bicultural that way. But they have some exposure to both cultures, but they're leaning more towards maybe the Western culture. And when it comes to things which are conflicting between the two cultures, like, for example, dating and marriage, and they pick someone from a different culture for their life partner, and for the parents accepting that, I think that is another big challenge, that both parents and children have to have some empathy for each other and some understanding that though the parents want their children to still carry forward the heritage and the roots and tradition, they have to also understand that the children are now in a completely different environment.
Actually, that's a whole topic by itself, right? Talking about marrying into different cultures and how do you handle that. And as parents, I mean, we come into this country, we bring our kids here, and we want them to be educated in the West, and we want them to be in the best place for all opportunities. But then when it comes to marriage, we suddenly want them to revert back, especially those who want to go back to India and get married. I can never figure that one out. So, but that's another topic in itself. But thank you for sharing your views. And now we'll move on to someone that doesn't need any introduction. Actually, none of our panelists need introduction, to be honest with you. We have Kanika. She's a singer, performer, lead vocalist with Andaz Creations. And she's a full-time job, as well as takes care of a beautiful daughter. She's a proud member of BWA, and she loves to participate in our shows. So Kanika, tell us, what are you experiencing as a mom?
Thank you so much, Renuji. So happy to be here. Thank you, everybody, for sharing valuable insights. So yes, I'm a proud mama of an almost 12-year-old, although she looks like my mom. She's ready at 18, 19. But so I'll share my perspective because I come from a musical background. I'll share from that perspective. Growing up in a musical family and being musically oriented all my life since childhood, I was very clear. My child will sing. My child will be musical, into performing arts. I was very, very, very firm. But I realized that, you know, I had a challenge. I didn't have the same kind of platform for her that I had way back in India. You know, I would find myself, we don't even have Indian lullabies. Everything was a Beethoven or a Mozart when I was singing to her, or, you know, then Wheels on the Bus happened. And then I was like, okay, I don't, even at school, it's not the same environment or the music or the, you know, morning prayer, Vandana that we grew up singing. That music wasn't there. So I became a music together teacher. And because of that, she became very musical. And my husband and I conversed with her in Hindi. So she mastered the language very early. We were very happy. But how do you combine Hindi language with the music and make sure she's singing the same music that I grew up singing? That was a challenge. Luckily, COVID happened and I found some amazing musical groups, online musical groups in the Bay Area, which later on became in person, East Bay karaoke and all that, because it's important for kids not to just sing, but hear other kids and other people hear them, because we learn through example. And I knew that I had to start singing all of that music again, and that kind of brought Bollywood music in my child's life, where she saw Mama singing again, so many people, her age group singing again. So I think that really helped.
And in actual fact, I've been to a couple of your shows, and there's children that come and sing, and you can never tell that they were raised here. They they have no accent at all when they sing, whether it's Hindi or Tamil. I mean, I don't know Tamil or Telugu, but I can definitely tell if somebody's putting an American accent into it. Yeah, so it's been actually great. So yeah, music is very important. We always stress that in preschool. It's one of the most important things to introduce your child to.
Yes.
Moving on, let's meet Ranjita. Ranjita has joined us today. She's a counselor advocate at nonprofit organization called Casa de Esperanza, and she's here to participate in this topic. And I know she's a single mom raising her child. And I know it's not easy when you have the strong Punjabi culture, which is what also I come from, and then you're raising your kids here, and then we have this whole community, that we have to deal with. So Ranjita, what are your thoughts?
Mine is still little. I'm still struggling, but I'm trying to make I'm telling my parents to talk to her in Hindi. My mom, she speaks in Hindi. My dad, he speaks in Punjabi. So there are two different languages that she's trying to learn. So sometimes she mixes it up, and she makes her own language and then she starts saying it. There was an incident where I took her to the Gurdwara, like my dad does all the time. But this time I took her and she goes, she says, she takes a prashad and she says, and then she needs the prashad again. So she's like, Mom, can I get the porridge back?
I get the porridge.
Like, what? It's not a porridge. It's Babaji's blessing. So she's like, oh, okay. Papa didn't tell me it's Babaji's blessing. I'm like, it's okay. We call it prashad. She's like, so she's trying to learn. She's trying to learn. So we try to eliminate English in home and try to do more cultural stuff at home and trying to get her involved in cultural activities like Bhangra, Gidda. And so she's getting more of that. Yep.
Great. So again, we hear now you're bringing dance into this. So we have Kanika is introducing music and dance. So that's great. And I think those are definitely two forms of keeping your child connected with the culture.
Yes.
Our next panelist is Nivedita. She's also the founder of My Positivity Matters. She's a personal transformation coach, motivational speaker, and spiritual seeker. She's a Harvard lawyer that gave up her practice to follow her passion. We need to have a separate show on that topic. I want to know how and why. Why? Because I thought I was the only one that gave up my career to do something else. So welcome, Nivi. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Renu, for having such a wonderful, you come up with such wonderful, relevant topics. And this is such a nuanced topic that I would like to share my experience at 3 levels. Even though I come from the state of Orissa in India, both my parents are considered Oriya. I was exposed to biculturalism, which is a microculture. And, they were supposed to speak the same language. My mother's language was supposed to be a dialect of the formal Oriya language, but they were so different. My dad never understood what she said. So we were exposed to biculturalism within the state. And then I got married to my husband, who's a Tamilian. And there, from the word go, I didn't realize within India, there's so much differences. When we talk about biculturalism, we think about religion, ethnicity, big things. It can be very small. And India has 4 major cultures, the East, West, North, and South. And I come from East. My husband comes from the South. We clashed big time, not in a bad way, but learning each other's culture. It was like almost I married a foreigner, because when my kids were born, the expectations of my in-laws about, even the toys, they're supposed to be educational. And I just couldn't for the life of me think, why do toys need to be educational? Later, I realized the inordinate emphasis the South Indians, especially Tamilians, put on education. So, dealing with things like that, it need not be big things. And then, of course, there is this between countries and religion. In the US, raising 2 kids, my kids are grown up right now, 24 and 26. But initially, we send them to private schools, and obviously they met more Indians. So it wasn't, I thought, oh, this is not bad. This is very easy. But then we quickly realized this is not the kind of the cultural, experience we wanted for the children. I wanted to move them to a public school where I knew I would give them my culture, but they have to learn the culture of their adopted countries, where they're born. So we moved to Palo Alto, and they were the, only Indian in their class. So it started off from, I could see the change right away. When she was in the private school, she would draw these princesses with black eyes and curly hair and what have you. And then in Gun High School, in Palo Alto School District, suddenly the princesses had blue eyes and blonde hair. And I'm like, okay, we gotta deal with this now. And also the food, they didn't want to carry Indian food because it had strong flavors. The accent, they were so embarrassed about parents or grandparents, while Spanish accent is cute, Italian accent is cute, French accent is cute, Indian accent, no, that's not cool. So I have to deal with issues like that. And I've experienced this. And I think in today's world, nobody can claim who lives in an urban environment not to have the challenge of raising bicultural children. Gone are the days you're married to the same state, same language, same religion. Everybody, whether you like it or not, has opened themselves to biculturalism, if not multiculturalism.
Absolutely. You brought some very good points up. And last but not least, I'll bring my own bicultural raised daughter, Sheena. So we'll find out if I did a good job or not. Sheena is a South Asian psychotherapist from Sacramento. She's a reigning president of the GGU Psychology Club and has recently been awarded, I can't even say this word, Sheena.
Fanstiel Fellowship. All
right. She's my child, my younger one. One of the most challenging children I've ever raised out of the two. I'm only kidding. I just like to give her a hard time. And she's here to share her views, maybe as the child, she's not a parent yet, as a child, of how it was to be raised not only by a single mom, by a dad who was Indian, but did not believe in the Indian culture at all. He was as American as you could get. And then her mom was from Africa, with me. And so not raised in India, but raised in Africa with a lot of the Indian culture. And then we have Sheena, who had now to deal with all this stuff. So Sheena, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I was honestly really nervous about speaking about this today just because of my mom being the person in charge. However, I decided that I'm going to be very vulnerable and honest in my response. So I did want to just define culture. Culture is essentially a learned pattern of perception, values, and behaviors. The reason why I want to go about that is the way that I'm describing my experience is a little different. Now, being a first generation born Punjabi Sikh Indian American, my family is actually from Kenya as well, I grew up very, very confused. I didn't speak Swahili. I didn't speak Punjabi. I learned English. And however, when I tried to fit in with the Indian girls at school, I was never, Indian enough. And when I was trying to fit in with the American girls at school, I was never American enough. And so I felt constantly outcasted. I also grew up with a mother who, as you all know, is very strong-minded and willed. And I grew up with her and I had a curfew until 27 years old of 10 p.m. until the day I got married, essentially, to my ex-husband. Now, bringing that up, if I were to get home at even 10:01, I would get a call asking why I didn't check in, why was I late, and all of that. And it really confused me because even at the age of 27, engaged, ready to get married, I wasn't able to, hang out with my friends as much as I wanted to, or be able to go out and party as much as they did. And so my mom always taught us that, the quote was, nothing ever good happens after 10 p.m. So just be at home. Don't talk to boys at night. And then the expectation was, we'll get married. And it's like, okay, you don't want me to talk to boys. That's our culture. But then the American culture is to date. And then you want me to get married at 27. So what do you want me to do?
Hey, I never wanted you to get married. Correction.
There was some expectation in that. However, what I learned is that even upon getting married at the age of 27, my ex-husband and I realized that we had two very different cultures. He was raised in a very traditional Punjabi family. And while my family is Punjabi, we were more Kenyan. Like, we were very modern and just very open. We drank in front of our parents. I would have a shot with my mom, or anything. It was just very open. And I realized that, shortly 9 months after our marriage, I wished the guy well, but our marriage wasn't going to work because our cultures were two very, very, very different. We were raised very different ways. He grew up in a family essentially where his mother took care of the household. and they wanted a wife who, you know, took care of cooked and cleaned at home. While I grew up in a family where my mom's like, be financially independent. You know, that's the culture that we're raised in. Don't rely on a man for financials ever. You know, like I didn't have a father growing up. So that was something that I still hold true till today. And it doesn't matter if I meet, you know, in-laws that understand that aspect or not. That is my culture. I learned to create my own culture. And that is something that I feel like a lot of bicultural kids, or I guess I can consider myself a kid in this situation, grow up understanding and learning in this society. So thank you.
Thank you, Sheena. And the topic was to focus on bicultural children, not your mom, okay? But thank you for that. And for those who are joining in, thank you so much. We'd love you, if you've joined into Zoom, we'd love you to actually bring on your videos so we can see your wonderful faces as well, and you can participate. So thank you so much. And I guess I'll do my introduction, although Sheena has done most of it already by talking about curfews. I'm Renu. I'm the founder of Genius Kids, and I'm also the founder of Building Women Empowered. I'm a motivational speaker. I'm a writer. I host many shows. I'm an author of 2 books. And my goal is, when I started Building Women Empowered, is I really felt that we needed to bring women of all cultures together. Growing up here, living here after living in Kenya and then in England and coming up here, I had to make friends in all these different countries. And then going through a divorce, it's a different culture completely. So I really felt it was so important to bring women together on one platform that we could all get to know each other on a more personal level, because I'm just not into these parties where you go to these big parties and you wear your fancy clothes and your jewelry and then you just show off about your designer handbags. You come back really not getting to know anyone. And I have to say that I'm so thrilled that Building Women Empowered is really turning into something very productive. Our events are small, still small, which I want to keep them small and private, but we really get to know people on a one-on-one basis, which is what I love. And the purpose of this forum is to bring everyone together to talk about things that are affecting our lives, others' lives, and giving, you know, views on that. And even if we choose to disagree with anyone, we should learn to disagree politely. So this is really what my forum was and my purpose. And Building Women Empowered is my retirement plan, to just enjoy and get to know people as I you know, get old and the hair gets even more gray. So thank you so much. And that was round 1. And I know we have a couple of guests or listeners that have joined us. So before we go over to round 2, I'd love to hear their views. So I think I can see some names here. Is this Sridevi Sriram? Hi, welcome.
Hi, hello. Sorry, I just joined actually. I know this started at 4, but I just joined a few minutes.
No worries, you can join. We're
Thank you,
the
daughter.
panelists, but we'd love you to give your views on this topic if you joined for raising bicultural children. I mean, what are your views on this?
No, I'm actually a mom of, you know, teenagers, twins. They are freshmen in high school. So it's challenging, right? So I first generation, I moved here, I went to school here, and then I've been working and settled here. So I think didn't actually think through all the complications and all the different details around raising children here. So I'm trying to raise them as Indians, right? Rooting them to my culture that I grew up. And at the same time, they are now exposed to multiple cultures. So they are now, you know, trying to figure out their identity, not just my kids and even their childhood friends. I see them all going through this now, that, hey, who am I? Right? Starting from names, sometimes even the names that we chose, they are so, you know, rooted. We chose names that have Sanskrit origin, didn't even think about, hey, people are going to have a hard time pronouncing here, or what is that going to be, you know, how is that going to sound here? Starting from there on, everything, right? Our food, everything is so different. So I would love to hear, I think, Renu, you're from you and other panelists here. These are common challenges. I'm sure these are just not unique to my family. So what are some of the things that we can do? I know your daughter was just talking about, hey, I had all this curfew and everything, right? So I'm going to probably, I'm not in a, you know, I don't have the necessity yet, but when the necessity arises, I'm going to likely impose those similar curfews myself. But how do I also adapt, and how do I help the children build their own identity, you know, appreciating the roots, but as well as embracing the other cultures and building up an identity of their own.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And, you know, we're talking about curfews. It's funny. You know, of course, I grew up in an environment, and I'm sure many of us did if we're from India. Well, I grew up in Kenya, but question about even talking about boys, it couldn't even bring it up. Couldn't even talk about boys at home, let alone take a phone call from a boy. And going out was not even a question. I was not even allowed out until I got married. So I felt that the fact that I was actually letting my kids go out was a big step for me. And I think what happens is when they're going to school, the children, they're going to school, this is what I used to hear from my kids. And they would tell me this, especially when they got teenagers, was like, you want us to be, you're raising us in America. We're in these American schools. We have American friends. And now they want to go out. And how do we tell them that our mom wants us home at 10 o'clock? And they were not understanding that me asking them to come home at 10 o'clock was not a cultural thing. It was a safety thing. Mine was more safety. And then being a single mom, I was paranoid. But then it turned into this cultural fight. Like, no, you just want to be so desi and you want to be so Indian. Why are you even raising us in this country? So it became those arguments, and I'm sure many parents have had that. But thank you for that. I do believe we have another listener on the board. It's Nilu Mera. Are you there, Nilu? Not sure if she's there, so I could see her. Can you see her, Ragini? Is she there?
Yes, yeah, Nilu is there, but she is on mute. I don't know if she's here.
Okay, no worries. So we'll move on to round two. So everybody shared basically their experiences on raising bicultural children. We've heard different views, and we've also heard from a child who's now an adult. So now let's talk about how do we balance this? How do we make our kids feel comfortable? Because you brought up a very good point, Sridevi, about names. And my name is so short, it's Renu. And people used to ask me, can we shorten it? And I'm like, how much shorter can you go than Renu? You want to call me Ray? I mean, seriously, why can't you just say Renu? And my big argument to them was, if I can say Stephen and I can say, you know, Heather, why can't you say Renu? Why do you have to shorten my name? Why is it so difficult? So good point on that. So let's move around we'll start back with our first panelist. Let's talk about, what are some tips you can give to parents about balancing? So Ragini?
Yeah, so a little bit of like my understanding on this. First of all, this is a very good thing that we're talking about raising bicultural children. It's good for them in the long run because they'll develop more sort of perspective, right? How to adjust and how to adapt different culture. Otherwise, we'll have like intolerance, right? We don't tolerate generally as, you know, different cultures and accept them. But this kind of upbringing can definitely help them to accept different cultures. And first of all, I think we should value our own cultures. And I think that is the starting point where I see a lot of people like Indians, they know the festivals and things, but they just know it like at a very shallow level, right? Understanding the depth of it, why we do that, right? The meanings and stories and the roots. And then you can teach the children so that they also learn it, that why we do it, right? That's the important part of this, you know, thing to cultivate this further. And also, I think spending more time, because we are so busy, I know that we all are busy, but spending more time with the children so that, you know, we can celebrate different festivals, right? From both the cultures together. It's not just our culture, but also the other cultures as well, so that they get the exposure from both the sides. And yeah, I think ultimately valuing what we are first step, and then the kids automatically will value. That's what I think is going to make a difference.
And in actual fact, studies have actually shown that bicultural children will actually, who take part in both cultures, are more self-assured and more successful in school than children that have actually rejected their cultures. So that's a very good point to know that your child will end up becoming very broad-minded and very accepting of different things, different religions, different types of food, music, when they're able to enjoy and appreciate different cultures. Anjana, you've raised two boys. Not easy to raise two boys. Did you have a curfew? Did you have a curfew for your kids?
No, my boys would actually, my older one actually asked me permission to go on a date. He sat me and my husband down, and he was in his ninth grade, which was his freshman year. And he said, Mom, the girl I was chasing when I was in 8th grade is available now. So I'm going to go ahead and ask her. And then but then again, he asked her, and then she politely refused, and he was moping. And I asked him what happened, and then he goes, Mom, I'm very happy that she didn't punch me in the face because she has a lot of respect for me. So anyhow, so the culture we typically raise kids at home is different than what the culture is they go through it in the school, right? Here we are interdependent. We look up to each other for help and assistance, whereas in the school, they are more taught to be independent. So that being said, and then even the challenges that they come through in schools, right? Like basically, like Ragini said, some of the festival things that we talk about, explain to them what those festivals are, celebrate them. You celebrate all the cultures at home. I come up from not only within the family, but my extended family also is diverse. Like I have Muslim relatives, I have Christian relatives, I mean, being a Hindu myself. And so we celebrate all festivals at home. And that's pretty much the first step in making them understand that all these are equal. And the second step is from a food to everything, right? Expose them to all kinds of food. Like this is the food in this culture. This is the food in this culture. And then, so otherwise kids are going to be just stuck on pasta and pizza forever otherwise. So expose them to that so they know, I mean, these taste good as well. And once you give them the exposure, the kids are going to ask you, can I have this? Can I have that? And they're not going to always lean towards pizza or pasta. And the third thing typically would be if you're visiting India, home country for vacations with your parents, to visit your parents, just don't stick at home, take them out, go to historical sites and explain to them what these places mean. Like in 2008, I took my son to all the, temples and places that I had been visiting growing up as a child. And he understood like, oh, this is what Mundan means, like, the head, shaving ceremony means. And this is what this particular festival means. So not only teaching them inside the home, but, this is like a field trip for them to take them out and teach them some of those things. So those are some of the tips I can give you, that you can help your child to be more prepared and receive this at the school, like when people challenge them. Like, they're not going to say your food is stinky. Hey, do you know what all the ingredients are in this one? And how tasty it is? Do you want to try it? I mean, those type of things can make sure that they don't get into fist fights or food fights in the canteen. That's all.
Great points. Thank you. Thank you for that. I read somewhere that the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, they published a study in 2012 on the effects of biculturalism on creative and professional success when later on for kids. And in this study, subjects were asked to come up with a creative use for a brick. And the bicultural subjects generated more ideas and more creativity. So they found out that basically children that had been exposed to different cultures were able to see things from multiple perspectives versus those that had only been, exposed to one culture, only learned one culture. So that's a pretty interesting experiment that they did. Our next panelist is Anjani from Scotland.
Hi there. I'm listening to some very, very interesting conversations here. Now, as I had said in the introduction, I was born and raised in Scotland. So my parents actually moved to Scotland when they were 16. So they were fairly young as well. So they adapted a lot of the Scottish culture, but they kept a lot of traditions at home as well. And I think when it comes to the balancing of having bringing up your children bicultural. I've got an 11-year-old. I think it really depends on what, right now we are in this day and age of screens and Google and you name it. We can get resources from all sorts of places. Our children are very different than what we are. Now, I always thought to myself, I'm not going to be like my mom. I'm not going to say, oh, this, and all that. Well, bite my tongue, because now that I have my own daughter, you find that you are in a similar predicament. Because when our parents were growing up, my parents were the first ones to move out of India. So they had different aspirations, different goals. Their goals were, okay, we really need to put our foot down and be able to earn a good living, make life better for our children or our child, and make sure that we fit in really well. So here I am, I'm going to school in Scotland, and yes, there was cultural differences that were they stood out a lot more at that time. There wasn't Google, so people couldn't Google up, well, what does this mean? What does that, why is that person's food smelling this way and all that? They didn't have those resources. I think kids nowadays are definitely a lot more resourceful, and they have a lot of avenues where they can get that information. So typically, in a way, it is easier, even though it's not easier at any time, it is easier to be able to get that information. When I was growing up, there was, you know, I mean, I don't even think there was the internet, you know, and I'm giving away my age here, but there was a lot of those things that were not available. So we had to put up with things with, and I do remember, nobody called me this, but maybe because I was just, you know, I just had a different personality, because it does come down to what kind of personality you have as well. But I would hear things like, oh, there's a Paki. Okay, so wait a minute, what are you calling a Paki? So in the United Kingdom, a Paki is referred to someone, a person that is of skin color that are from the Far East. Well, our answer was always like, well, we're not from Pakistan. We're not trying to be biased or prejudiced, but we're not from Pakistan. We're from India. So they never knew all those differences. So we had those challenges growing up. Now, the challenges that, you know, I would be, you know, that I look at bringing up my child is, okay, so I'm kind of a mixed culture. I'm a bicultural child myself. And, you know, so then here you put in this third thing of, okay, believe it or not, I have had a hard time adjusting to the American culture, even though I was born, you know, I have my Indian foundation, my Indian heritage, my Indian roots. I went through what I went through with schooling and growing up in the United Kingdom and Scotland. Then here I am, I've held on to a lot of good cultural things that I have been brought up with in Scotland that belong to Scotland, but yet I have my roots and my heritage as Indian. So now here is my daughter, who is born and raised in California, and more of it I've seemed to recognize that there's got to be a balance, because she actually went to the United Kingdom. She went to Scotland for 2 years, and she studied there for 2 years. And she was immersed in the culture over there. So here is one hell of a confused child, like thinking, what's going on here? You know, the people here in this country are different. California, where I've been born, are different, the way that they're doing things. So how do we define culture? You know, when we define culture, we're looking at, okay, what language do they speak? Festivals, rituals, ceremonies, what is it? Holidays, pastimes, foods. That's really what defines a culture. And then everything added on is, you know, that's basically what we call in Indian the tarka. And then everything else added on is, you know, your garnish, whatever you're doing. Yeah. So in that way, the one thing I've learned to try and keep it balanced, and I'm not super successful at it, I'm still adamant and I'm still going on it. I think you have to teach your children and let them know, this is what our roots are. This is what our heritage is. This is where we have originally, our ancestors have come from. And this is what we've got to recognize and keep alive. So that is, I think, our base foundation. That's what we've got to remember. And then everything else, because my husband, he's born and raised in India. So he's not born and raised in Scotland. So we have that kind of tipping scale. Okay, how do you balance all that out? So one key thing is, whenever my husband and I have to talk about something that's got to be related to, you know, our daughter Ariana, we have to, we talk about that separately. We don't talk to her about it in front of her, because that's an adult conversation. So we keep her, we tell her that, you know, it's very important that we learn our roots. Now I have her, and I do this because I was always interested. My personality was, I always wanted to learn a lot. So I learned about the Indian culture. I spoke both languages, Hindi and Punjabi. So my parents taught me those when I was very, very young, right from the beginning. And so then what I did was, because I was self-driven and interested in doing this, I taught myself about the Indian culture, even if my parents didn't have a lot of time or information to give me. A lot of time, yes, they're trying to build their life in a different country. So I took self-interest in that. And not all children are like that. So we've got to do our part. So I have my daughter enrolled in a shlok class. Now, what's shlok class? They teach them about, you know, going back to basics, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana. What is it that all means? What are the teachings that we can learn from that? So I think it's important to tell them that it doesn't matter what cultural background that a person comes from. You have to learn the good things from it. You have to remember your own roots and your own foundation and keep that alive, and then be open, because this is a global era, it is a global time, and be open to everything else that is there. But also remember, there's house rules, and I keep them as house rules. I don't try and mix the cultural part on it, even though there might be a bit of culture in it. I say, this is our rules for our house, and this is what we're going to follow, because that's what we are as a family. Your friend's family, they have their own home rules and their own house rules. So I try not to bring the culture as a conflict. I try and bring it as a family unit and our home rules.
Thank
So
you. Thank you for
how I
that.
try to deal with that.
Actually brought up a very good point. I think many times we do mix culture into the house rules, and that's where the conflict happens with the kids, because we say, I told you so, because that's what Indian families do. Was no, you know, we can't tell our kids Indian families don't date, because they do date. And look at all the movies now and what they show, right? So we can't even say that anymore.
True. Thank you.
Yeah, nowadays you can't even sit and watch those movies. You have to check and watch it yourself before you make your kids watch it. I wonder sometimes what they're producing out there.
I know.
All right, Gauri, were you a confused cultural child?
Me, I wasn't actually. I grew up in India where I was exposed to multiple cultures. I had the privilege of going to a convent school in India where there were people from different parts of India, and I loved it. I think I was exposed to different cultures. And I think I also was very lucky that I had parents and grandparents, and I got to learn from them, where they taught me certain things by actually being that way and explaining things to me as a friend, rather than saying that we want you to do this because we said so. And I think that is a very important point that I wanted to bring up. Teach your children to enjoy your home culture. If you're from India, whichever home culture you're from, like, make it an enriching and enjoyable experience for them. Like some of the panelists were saying, Kanika, Ranjita, Ragini, I think, expose them to the music, the dance, the food, whatever they'll enjoy. And the cultural diversity. If you want them to follow certain traditions, make them enjoy it and explain as a friend why that particular tradition is that way, or why you want them to follow a certain thing rather than want you to do it this way, because then they will develop a certain resentment. They will not understand why you want them to do it. So like how Sheena was saying too, so Renu, like if you couldn't explain that it's for their safety, so they understand that it's you as a parent always have their back and they can always turn to you, and the reason, and you are looking out like for the best for them. So you're exposing them to these two different cultures, but the reason that you want them to carry forward the roots is because there's so much value and it's such an enjoyable experience. And the way you can do that is, other than exposing them to the food, music, culture, take them to your home country for visits, have them spend time with the grandparents. I think it's a great bond. Children learn a lot from their grandparents, and be very balanced about what you pick to stick to your home culture. Like how I think the guest speaker was saying about picking Sanskrit names. I think that is totally fine. You can pick Sanskrit names. I think the world is evolving. There's so much more cultural diversity, especially in the United States. And Indian names especially are very phonetic. So you pick the names that you want for your children, but explain to them why you picked that name, what that name means, the beauty of that name, so that they can explain it to their friends and they can explain how to pronounce those names. So be very particular about certain things that you want them to follow, but also be very empathetic that, you know, in certain decisions that your child is making, they are growing up in a different country, a different time from when you were growing up in the home country that you were growing up in. And be very aware and mindful that even the home country you grew up in is very different now in terms of it has moved forward to, it has evolved a lot too. So as long as there is empathy on both sides, I think parents and children have that understanding that their parents only want the best for them. They're actually a friend to them, and they can help them navigate this world where they're trying to find their identity. I think you'll be good.
Excellent points. And I think another very important thing to mention is raising kids is don't disrespect other cultures. It's very easy. You know, we come up, we are as a community very biased. We can be very biased when it comes to religion and stuff, and you want to put down something else. So I think it's so important that you never put down another culture or another religion, because those questions do come up, you know, and they come up where eventually when your child wants to get married and they meet somebody from another culture and they come home and you're like, no, you can't do this, but why not? You know, suddenly the question is, why not? You know, you taught me to respect all cultures. Now you're suddenly saying I can't do this. Good, very good points. Kanika. Is Miss Kanika? There you go.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So great points. I really, before I start on the musical note, Gauri and Renuji mentioned about the name. I really like that because my daughter's name is Ronak. And, you know, I was very strict about this, you know, whenever her friends or somebody would try to call her a Ron or a Ronnie or something. And no, you know, your name, you just make sure the people call you Ronak. Otherwise, their name is just gonna get lost over a period of time. We're just gonna be called Ron, and that's just not what Ronak is. So thanks for that. But coming back to music, I think just like in food, exposure is a must. You expose your children to all sorts of food and then let her make the decision that, okay, over a period, she decided that mac and cheese and pizza is as comfort food as dal, chawal, and butter chicken. They all are her favorites, and I let her make that choice without forcing anything. I think in music also, it's so important to expose your child. I feel really, really, really sad. I have seen a lot of Indians here in the Bay Area. You know, when it comes to themselves enjoying the music, they will love the Indian music, the Rafi, the Lata, the Suniti, the Arijit, the Shreya Ghoshal, Jagjit Singh. But almost the maximum percentage I see, which is nothing wrong, but all of the children are enrolled in piano classes. The kids are in ballet. You know, the maximum thing they can think about Indian music is ek do bhajan sikha diye. My child is doing 1 or 2 bhajan and that's their achievement. No, and I feel so sad that even in India, they're trying to copy the Western culture, and the kids there also are doing the same thing. What is happening to Rafi songs, Lataji's songs, that music, Asha's, Helen, what's going on, right? It's just dying a slow death. And personally, it's very heartbreaking for me to come be a musician, a singer, and see all this happening. So I'm glad that better sense prevailed on me sooner than later. And I made the tip here is for parents to keep exposing them, and not all are singers, but you can still not being a singer also. For me, because I was a singer and I made my daughter sing with me, and now she's at a stage where when Lata ji passed away, she did a whole research on her life. She was so excited and curious. She knows all the lead singers now and she's singing all these songs, and it was an effort, but I'm so glad that I achieved that level with her. But other parents who are Indians and are not singers, you can still, because you appreciate that music, expose your children. I know on the radios here, it's unlike that, we don't get to hear that music, but you can use Bluetooth or other sources to kind of car rides are a great way for them to hear music. So expose them to your music. Don't let that music die a slow death. Ballet is good, piano is good, but how about tabla? There are Bay Area has tabla artists. They will come home and teach your children the tabla, the harmonium. Let that also live. That not just, the cello and violins, but let those instruments, that music not die, is my request and urge to the Indian community.
Great points, Kanika. And one point I will say as an educator is, if you are going to enroll your child in any classes, let them enjoy the classes. Don't let those classes be only for competitions. Exactly. That's another thing I see is parents only want to enroll their kids in classes so they can take part. You have to win chess, you have to win basketball, you have to win the piano, you have to pass this. Why can't you just do something just to enjoy it? Why can't it just be a hobby?
But that also can be peer pressure, like, so-and-so's friend is doing this or so-and-so is doing this, so I have to put my child here too.
Right.
Oh, they are excelling in X, Y, and Z. I need my child to also excel in X, Y, and Z. Yeah.
Great points today, guys. Okay, Ranjita, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. All right. What are you going to do now for your 5-year-old? All these ideas. What are you going to do when we end our show?
I had an experience like you. My parents are like strict like you. Like, nobody can okay?
So lucky you were even allowed to go out. I wasn't even allowed to step out.
No, but there was a trust, there was a trust. Yes, there was a safety concern, but yes, there was a trust that you have to let us know, like, to never jana, so like you have to let them know, like, hey, this is what is going on. Like, I'll be hanging out a little bit late, but yes, for sure, I'm gonna have that trust in my daughter to do the same thing with me. But I'm training her from a very young age to get into multiple different things like activities, getting into Bhangra, Gita, taking her to the Gurdwara, because that's what I started with, doing Kirtan, Gita and all this. So I'm implementing the same thing with her, so she knows, like, this is my culture and this is what is, whatever they attract to. She's just a little right now, like a handful of baby, my little baby. So I just try to do like whatever she likes. So I just like, okay, baby, if you like it, you can try for a couple of days. And if you don't like it, just let me know. But if you like it, you can continue doing it. Mommy is ready to pay for it. But yeah, you need to love that and go for it. And she's been doing it. It's been like 1 year now, and she loves dancing and she loves the music, and she'll be like coming home, she's like dancing with the all the songs. She's like right here, all the songs, Punjabi songs. Before, she never wanted to listen to the Punjabi song. She always used to listen to the English music and everything, and now she literally listens to that Punjabi music, and she'll be like, Mommy, main gana la duma. I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? Like, I'm happy because you want to do it, so I'm just having that trust, having that faith in her that she'll be good. Like, just trying from the little base right now, but it's good.
Small steps.
Happy.
That's right, small steps. Thank you.
Yep.
Nivedita.
So wonderful points everybody has made, and I would maybe focus some of the things that I have seen and experienced in my own life. First of all, my experience has been, especially in my generation and the generations before that, I'm older than many of the participants here, is that when we leave India, you get frozen in a time capsule. And everything that India was at that point is your reference point. And you forget that, India has moved on. One of the speakers, panelists pointed it out. And, when you go to India, you don't realize you're on such a overdrive to get the Indian culture that you forget that, when they go to India, they stand out. Like my kids would touch everybody's feet. Nobody does that in India anymore. So things like, and even clothes, when we go to a temple or to a Diwali, we just, take out our best Indian finery and wear it. Kids in India don't do that. They wear Western clothes most of the time. So these kids are like, what the hell? This is not, we're out of place. So
you
that
end up being the only ones dressed up.
yeah, you are. And in fact, it was so funny when I would land in India, I'd go to a store or whatever it is, or visit friends. I mean, go to movies or wherever, social places. And people would say, oh, so when did you come from the US? And I'm like, but I don't have an accent. Then my sister said, have you seen your clothes? This was 3 years ago. Nobody wears these anymore. So realizing that India moves very fast. We have to update ourselves. It's not the same India. Secondly, to like Ragini said, when we do something, understand why we do. We are so intellectually lazy. I'll give you an example. A very close family friend wanted to do a sacred thread ceremony, Upanan. The Brahmins do that. So he went to India, took his kid, wanted to get the blessings of his guru. And guess what? He'd forgotten to wear his own thread. So the guru said, first wear the thread, then you'll do it for your son. So why are you doing the thread ceremony? Do you even know what the thread ceremony is? If you don't know and you don't respect it and you're not wearing it, why would you want to put your kid through it? It's a wonderful ceremony, but make the effort to understand that. So that's another thing I know. To this country, I came from Orissa in India, which is a very small town. When I grew up, it was one of the poorest and smaller states in India. And then I went to Delhi to study for undergrad to one of the most advanced school those days, colleges called Miranda. But my mother taught me something which I have used very effectively with my kids. She took the fun out of resistance and defiance. She sat us down and she said, here's a cigarette, smoke it. Here's a glass of wine, drink it. Because I don't want you going there and people taunting you, saying that you've not tried. How would you know? I want you to try it and realize that there's nothing great about this. So never feel that, oh my God, maybe I should try this. So I went there and my friends in Delhi were like, oh my God, I mean, nothing is exciting enough for you that I would run back home instead of being in the dorms. Most of the girls wanted to stay there. So I incorporated that with my children, saying that let's have a glass of wine. You want to drink a glass of wine? Let's have a glass of wine. Let's find out what it is. So that defiance is not there.
Correct.
And that's one part of it. The other thing is that exposing them to everything. And as you correctly pointed out, we are so judgmental, so biased, and sometimes we don't even realize the unconscious bias we have about other religions, or other cultures, especially about Americans. I mean, I have a friend who's much older than me, and when his daughter was getting married, and he met the prospective groom, he said, so do you drink? And the guy said, yes. So you're a drunkard? He said, no, I'm not a drunkard. I drink. So, thinking that all Americans are drunkards, they are, sex obsessed, and they are, they don't have a culture. There are many Americans who are far more regulated than Indians are. I am much more liberal than many of my American friends, for whatever reason. So having that, being aware that not all Americans wear makeup, not all Americans have sex by the age of 10, not all Americans drink all the time. So being aware of that. And also, while we are trying to teach our kids our culture, understanding and recognizing we really don't know what the American culture is. We think we do. Asking them to teach us, learn with them. What is it that they're trying to? And many times the kid will tell you, and you have your parental authority to draw boundaries, but understand what it is. We don't realize it, and we think we know the American culture. That's another thing. And finally, my theory is expose your culture and other cultures or whatever is important to you, but ultimately allow them to define themselves. So you can use a time, whether it is 18 years, 21 years, when they go to college, but at that point, whether you're a vegetarian, whether you're a Hindu Brahmin, whether you're this, whether you're that, you have got 18 years or 21 years to teach them your culture. If they didn't pick it up, let it go. Let them do. They will come back. You have sown the seeds. When the time is right, it'll blossom. If it doesn't, it never won't. They don't resonate with you, no matter what you do, they didn't resonate. So let it go. Understanding that there is a statute of limitation. You cannot keep on pushing a 35-year-old child saying that you got to do this because this is our culture. So at some point saying that and letting them define themselves. But yeah, you can say, look, hey, till 18, I'm going to tell you this is our culture, this is our ancestry, this is what we do. But hereafter, you're on your own. You can choose whatever. So yeah, those are the few things that I wanted to highlight.
Great points, and I resonate definitely with you about giving the wine and all that stuff. I did that with my kids. I sat them down and said, here, have a drink. I didn't do the cigarette because I don't know how to smoke one, but I definitely did the wine. And I said, you know, and also with the dating, I told them, I said, if you want to date, that's fine. I just have a simple thing. I need to know where you are and who you're with. You know, I'm not going to come and stalk you, but I need to know just for, again, it was always boiled down to safety. And I think giving them a reason, one thing that doesn't work with any kids, it's not just Indian kids or bicultural kids, any kids, when you tell them, I told you so. I want you to do this because I told you so. You know, that's the worst thing you can tell a child. And Sridevi, you brought a very good point up about, yes, we put our kids into all these classes so they can get into great colleges. Yeah, and we sometimes forget that it becomes such a focus of just college, we forget to enjoy ourselves. So thank you so much. And Sheena, are you there? My
Yes,
child.
I'm here. I
Yeah.
wanted to just preface as well. In no way was I putting my mom down. That was not the intention of my story about my
It's
curfew.
okay. I'll sort you out later.
My mom is a great mother, but something that my stepdad actually really did with me was incorporate, you know, it was before I got into high school, he sat me down and gave me a beer and he goes, here, drink it with me. And I remember that day because I had a sip of it and I passed out on the couch and I woke up the next day. And I was like, I'm never drinking again. I was like, Dad, that's so disgusting. Why did you make me do that? I was like, you'll learn. Going into 4 years later, we went to a party for prom, and everyone at prom was intoxicated in some way or another. I called my stepdad and I said, hey, Dad, please come pick me up because I don't want to be here. I don't feel safe. I want to go home. And he had taught me from the early start of my high school experience that the open communication that was instilled between my mom and my dad. My mom was more of that strict parent. My dad was like, you know, my stepdad, I'm saying stepdad, I call him dad, but just so everyone understands, because the previous time I talked about my biological father, but he was like, this is exactly why I gave you that beer, because now you know that you can trust me and call me and I can pick you up when you need me. And since then, it's just been that great open communication that I absolutely love. And I think that that's one of the biggest tools, you know, in raising a bicultural child is having open communication and understanding that, yeah, you know, sometimes they won't completely understand, you know, you the first time. However, in the end, I look back on it now and everything my mom has taught me. And now I choose my bedtime for me to come home from a party at 10 o'clock because nothing good happens after 10 o'clock. So thank you, Mom.
All right. Okay. I know we've been joined by Rithya. Rithya, would you like to share any views if you want to come on the camera? I see somebody called Rithya there.
Yeah, she joined, I think, a few minutes back.
Okay, no problem. So thank you so much. I think there's been a very good discussion over here. We've learned a lot, but you know, we brought up some good points about how you have to explain to your kids in terms of why you're doing something. So, you know, explain, as Ragini mentioned, don't just celebrate Holi if you don't know what Holi is about, explain it. Same thing with the Gurdwara, you know, when you take them to the Gurdwara, people forget the matha take part, you know, they just do the quick matha take and they go to eat the langar, and the kids think that going to the Gurdwara means eating langar. Of course, the langar is delicious, I agree, but, you know, it's not $1 takeout meal. It's go sit there and sometimes listen to the prayers. And otherwise, what happens is you're forced too much later on in life to look up and execute things. And you know, I'll talk about, you know, and I think keeping communication very open, it's so critical with your kids. If you want to raise kids, bicultural or not, just having open, clear communication with your children is so important, because then you won't have that confusion, and they won't. And if they do have the confusion, then they clearly will come back and talk to you about it. So I think we're going to wrap up. And before we wrap up as well, you know, this is all about building women empowered. And I always like to wrap up with each and every one of our members share their empowerment vision. Just in one line, tell us, why do you feel it's so important that women take a stand today? Why is it so important for us to feel empowered and empower others? So in no particular order, I'm just looking at the camera. I'll start with Gauri.
I think I'm an empowered woman because I try to keep improving myself and I make my own choices, and I'm here to learn and make myself better and to help empower others.
Thank you. Ranjita.
Oh, good one. Like me, I try to get involved in everything that I can, like just to empower, like your group, like having that multicultural group, where the people are from different areas, different cultures, coming from different parts of India, and we get to know each other's culture and respect. That's what we need to pass on to our kids too. Like we need to respect others' culture and religion, and not hesitate to like, what do you say, like kind of just take it, accept that, you know what I mean, wherever we come from, not be like, no man, I want to be something like the other gore, like respect your own culture before you respect anybody else other's culture. Respect your own culture, because like जो तुझे अपने religion नो respect नहीं करोगे तो दूसरे की respect करना, right? So
In other words, love
respect
yourself
our
first.
culture first.
Love
And
yourself
like
first.
Kanika and Gauri was saying, like, is like a lot of people, like they cannot pronounce our name. We have to let them, like, help them out to pronounce our name. We have to respect our name, because our name, yeah, we know is big and long and whatever it is, yes, but if you can say different million names, like you can say our name too, like you said. So yeah, just
Thank you.
respect.
Thank you so much. And it's funny
Thank
to talk about names. I did an interview for someone today, and I could clearly see that she's not from this country. So, but she had an American name. So I looked at her, and I just, at the end of the interview, I said, "So what's your name?" And she gave me a name, and I said, "No, what's your real name?" And she said, "That is my real name." And I said, "Oh, really interesting." And then she said, "Actually, I changed my name." And I said, "Why did you change your name?" And she said, "I changed my name because I was coming to this country and nobody would have been able to say my name." And I was like, I would have never done that. I said, "Well, tell me
Nope.
what your name is. I will call you by your birth name because I don't need to call
Yes.
you by this American name." Yeah. So be
Be proud
empowered.
of your
Love who
name.
you are. Yeah, love who you are.
Yeah.
Ragini.
Yeah, so I think we all are empowered like human beings. I mean, I think this is like, we don't believe in this, but each one of us are empowered in our own ways. And I feel, with specifically with the raising children, like in that perspective, that, this quote is said, monkey see, monkey do, right? So we first have to do and practice, learn, understand the depth of all of these things. And then obviously the kids will follow, If they don't follow, like Nivedita said, then leave it, let it go.
Let it go. Exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah.
don't think you've been a bad parent. I mean, if it didn't work out, it didn't work out. It's okay. That's just, they want to be someone else. So
Yeah.
thank you. Nivedita.
So I think it's very important, like Ragini said, everybody should be empowered, but it is particularly important that women be empowered, because I think it was Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, who said that if you educate and empower a man, you're empowering and educating an individual. If you empower and educate a woman, you are empowering and educating a family, a community, a country, because they are the keepers and drivers of culture. So it is very important that women, because the first 7 years, the critical from a psychological perspective of what a kid learns, and whether we like it or not, they are gravitate towards the mother. So I take every effort, and I don't spare myself how to learn about my culture. That is the primary thing I put in, and other cultures where I'm exposed to, my children are exposed to, so that I can blend the two and fit in myself so that they can fit in. And like Ragini said, kids follow by example, not by lecture. So if you're going to make the effort, they're going to make the effort. If you take the easy way out, they're going to take the easy way out.
Anjina.
For being on such a wonderful group, like Building Women Empowerment, I think for me, the biggest thing is it doesn't matter what the topic is. I think it's sharing the experiences and helping someone else, because there's always one thing that we can always take away with a talk like this, or conversations or anything. I think that's really important. And education does start at home. It does, whether it be for our spouse, whether it be for our child, whoever is in the family. What we do is what they will either reciprocate or what they will follow. I always teach my daughter one thing, which is really important to me. And I always tell her kindness. I love this quote, kindness, it's loaning someone your strength instead of reminding them of their weakness. And that's exactly the reason of building women empowerment for me.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a beautiful quote. Kanika.
Thank you.
Yes, hi. So, yes, I feel I'm an empowered woman making a difference because I feel I am bold, I'm brave. While there is joy and in being the safe space and doing what others are doing. There is also a joy in finding your own individuality, taking risks, learning to make mistakes, being forgiving of your own self, learning through those mistakes and doing something out of the box. So don't limit yourself. Do what you want to do because somebody will be always there to judge you and stop you. So don't undermine yourselves, your potential. Go out there, do what you want to do, have faith in yourself, make a difference. Be bold, be brave, be beautiful. Thank you.
Anjana.
So I've said this before, fallen flat on my face, dusted up, picked up myself, moved forward, made myself independent, empowered myself. So if you are empowered, your children are going to look up to you, and you're not only a role model for other women, but also for your own family. And that being said, in this context, the kids will look up to me as a role model, not just as a mom as well. And they will do all the right things and, be wary of the wrong things. And it's not only that, but also when the children talk about their mom in front of their friends and others, like, my mom is cool and this and that, they also start looking at, hey, my parents are not like so. And they feel much more comfortable coming and talking to you and taking your advice, and you're able to channel the path and direction for those children as well, who are not comfortable bringing up some things to their parents. So, that's how I hope to be as well, is not just role model for women, but for kids as well.
Sheena?
Yes, so I want to finish today by saying two different quotes. The first is by a famous author named Anne Tepanella, and it's one of the benefits of being bicultural, is simply the awareness that how you live is not the only way. So I think that definitely is a great takeaway from today. And my women empowerment quote is from my favorite, Malala Yousafzai, and it's, do not wait for someone else to come and speak for you. It's you who can change the world. And that is why I'm here today. So thank you.
Thank you. And Sridevi, since you've been with us throughout, would love to hear how you feel about women empowerment and your ideas on that. And thank you so much for joining us as well.
Oh, sure. Yes, it was a great session. And thank you to you, Renu, and all the panelists. I think, it just keeps echoing that you kind of, in a way, lead. I don't mean to say you're a leader, but in a way, you're living your life. You're being an example, a role model for not only the your family members, but for the society as well, right? So financial independence is definitely there, but I think just being there, gaining the knowledge and just kind of being a learner and learning to support and teaching them empathy and compassion, right there, I think you already did your responsibility as a parent and as well as a dutiful society member. So yeah. Thank you all. I enjoyed this.
Thank you so much. And I'm not sure if Neelu is there. If Neelu, you're there, you can come on. Otherwise, we're going to wrap up. From my side, everyone, thank you so much. I'll leave you with this thought. For those who are raising bicultural children or know someone that is, you should consider raising a multicultural household as a very unique opportunity, because now as a family, you can decide what parts you want to incorporate your country, the new country you're in, and elements from your home country. And by having best of both worlds, you and your family can participate in so many different activities, including different native holidays. So I think sometimes we need to forget about where we are from. and open ourselves up and open our children up to these possibilities and not create little boxes and little groups. And in terms of women empowerment, I'd like to encourage everyone to participate, whether it's our discussions or events. We had one of our events yesterday, and I think they seem to keep getting better and better. We had a tea party in Palo Alto, and we've started now with any of our sessions. Everybody has to introduce themselves, and we have to tell our age. And we're doing that because we want everybody to understand this. Never fear how old you are. And in terms of that, talk about who you are. And there was such a connection. We had a young girl who was 23 all the way through to 70 plus on the table. And we still had a great tea party and everybody had something to share. So I think that's just so important, and it's bringing women together. And please continue to participate in our discussion. Our next one is actually going to be in, because we have quite a few events in March, is going to be in April. And it's going to be the pros and cons of a long distance relationship. So anyone that wants to participate in that and talk about the pros and cons of falling in love with somebody who lives 7 continents away, please DM me and message me, and let's get you on board. And otherwise, thank you so much. Happy Sunday. And thank you again for being part of this show.
Thank you,
Thank you
Renu,
very
and
much.
all the other participants. Wonderful
you.
discussion.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Renu ji.
Thank you.